Okay, we are down to the very end of Danny, champion of the world. Entice, said Sergeant Samways, looking first at Mr. Hazel, then at us. Entice them, did you say? Of course he enticed them. Well now, said the sergeant, popping his bicycle carefully against one of our pumps. This is a very interesting accusation, very interesting indeed, because I ain't never heard of nobody enticing a pheasant across 6 miles of fields in the open countryside. How do you think this enticing was performed, Mr. Hazel, if I may ask? Don't ask me how he did it, because I don't know, shouted Mr. Hazel. But he's done it all right. The proof is all around you. All my finest birds are sitting here in this dirty little filling station when they ought to be up in my own wood getting ready for the shoot. The words poured out of Mr. Hazel's mouth like hot lava from an erupting volcano. Am I correct, said Sergeant Samways? Am I absolutely accurate in thinking that today's is the day of your great shooting party, Mr. Hazel? That's the whole point, cried Mr. Hazel, stabbing his forefinger into the sergeant's chest as though he were punching a typewriter or an adding machine. And if I don't get those birds back on my land quick, sharp, some very important people are going to be extremely angry this morning. And one of my guests, I have you know, Sergeant, is none other than your boss, the Chief Constable of the county. So you had better do something fast about it, hadn't you? Unless you want to lose your sergeant stripes of yours. Sergeant Samways did not like people poking their fingers in his chest, least of all Mr. Hazel. And he showed it by twitching his upper lip so violently that his moustache came alive and jumped about like some small bristling animal. Now, just 1 minute, he said to Mr. Hazel. Just 1 minute, please. I am to understand that you are accusing this gentleman here of committing this act. And of course I am, cried Mr. Hazel. I know he did it. And do you have any evidence to support this accusation? The evidence is all around you, shouted Mr. Hazel. Are you blind or something? Now my father stepped forward. He took one small pace in the front and fixed Mr. Hazel with his marvellous bright twinkling eyes. Surely you know how these pheasants came here, he said softly. Surely I do not. No. How they came here, snapped Mr. Hazel. Then I should tell you, my father said, because it is quite simple. Really, they all knew they were going to be shot today if they stayed in your woods, so they flew in here to wait until the shooting was over. Rubbish, yelled Mr. Hazel. It's not rubbish at all, my father said. They are extremely intelligent birds. Pheasants. Isn't that so, Doctor? They have tremendous brain power, Doc Spencer said. They know exactly what's going on. It would undoubtedly be a great honour, my father said, to be shot by the Chief Constable of the county, and an even greater one to be eaten afterwards by Lord Thistlewaite, but I do not think a pheasant would see it that way. You are scoundrels, both of you, shouted Mr. Hazel. You are rapscallions of the worst kind. Now then, said Sergeant Samways. Insults ain't getting us to anywhere, nowhere. They only aggravate things. Therefore, gentlemen, I have a suggestion to put before you. I suggest we all of us make a big effort to drive these birds back over the road onto Mr. Hazel's land. How does that strike you, Mr. Hazel? It'll be a step in the right direction, Mr. Hazel said. Get on with it then. How about you, William? The sergeant said to my father. Are you agreeable to this action? I think it's a splendid idea, my father said, giving Sergeant Samways one of his funny looks. I'll be glad to help. So will Danny. Well, what's he up to now, I wondered, because whatever my father gave somebody one of his funny looks, it meant something funny was going to happen. And Sergeant Samways, I noticed, also had quite a spark on his usually stern eye. Come on, my lads, he cried. Let's push these lazy birds over the road. And with that, he began striding around the filling station, waving his arms at the pheasants and shouting, shoo, 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 off you go, beat it, get out of here. My father and I joined him in this rather absurd exercise. And for the second time this morning, clouds of pheasants rose into the air, clapping their enormous wings. It was then I realised that in order to fly across the roads, the birds would first have to fly over Mr. Hazel's mighty Rolls-Royce, which lay right in the path with its door still open. Most of the pheasants were too dopey to manage this, so down they came, again smack on top of the great silver car. They were all over the roof and the bonnet, sliding and slithering, trying to keep a grip on that beautifully polished surface. I could hear their sharp claws scraping on the pavement as they struggled to hang on, and already they were depositing their dirty droppings all over the roof. Get them off, screamed Mr. Hazel. Get them away. Don't you worry, Mr. Hazel, sir, Sergeant Samways cried. We'll fix them for you. Come on, boys. Easy does it. Shoo. Right over the road. Not on my car, you idiot, Mr. Hazel bellowed, jumping up and down. Send them the other way. We will, sir, we will, answered Sergeant Samways. In less than a minute, the Rolls-Royce was literally festooned with pheasants, all scratching and scrabbling and making their disgusting runny messes all over the shiny silver paintwork. What is more, I saw at least a dozen of them fly right inside the car through the open door by the driver's seat. Whether or not Sergeant Samways had calmly steered them in there himself, I didn't know, but it happened so quickly that Mr. Hazel hadn't even noticed. Get those birds off my car, Mr. Hazel bellowed. Can't you see they're ruining the paintwork, you madman? Paintwork, Sergeant said. What paintwork? He had stopped chasing the pheasants now, and he stood there looking at Mr. Hazel and shaking his head sadly from side to side. We've done our very best to encourage these birds over the road, he said, but they're too ignorant to understand. My car, man, shouted. Get them away from my car. Ah, the sergeant said. Your car, yes, I see what you mean. They're beastly dirty birds, pheasants are. But why don't you just hop in quick and drive away fast, and they'll get off them, won't they? Mr. Hazel, who seemed only too glad of an excuse to escape from this madhouse, made a dash for the open door of the Rolls and leaped into the driver's seat. The moment he was in, Sergeant Samways slammed the door, and suddenly there was the most infernal uproar inside the car as a dozen or more enormous pheasants started squawking and flapping all over the seats and around Mr. Hazel's head. Drive on, Mr. Hazel, sir, shouted Sergeant Samways through the window of his most commanding police officer voice. Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. Get going, quick, there's no time to lose. Ignore them pheasants, Mr. Hazel, and accelerate and that engine. Mr. Hazel didn't have much choice. He had to make a run for it now. He started the engine, and the great Rolls shot off down the road with clouds of pheasants rising up in all directions. Then an extraordinary thing happened. The pheasants had flown up off the car and stayed in the air. They didn't come flapping drunkenly down as we had expected them to. They stayed up and kept on flying. Over the top of the filling station they flew, and over the caravan, and over the field at the back of our little outdoor lavatory stood, and over the next field, and over the crest of the hill until they disappeared from sight. Great Scott, Doc, Spencer cried. Just look at that. They've recovered. The sleeping pills have worn off at last. Now all the other pheasants around the place were beginning to come away. They were standing up tall with their legs and ruffling their feathers and turning their heads quickly from side to side. One or two of them started running about. Then all the others started running, and then Sergeant Samways, flapping his arms at them, the whole lot took off into the air and flew over the filling station and were gone. Suddenly, there was not a pheasant left. And it was very interesting to see that none of them had flown across the road or even down the road in the direction of Hazel's Wood and the great shooting party. Every one of them had flown in exactly the opposite direction. Out on the main road, a line of about 20 cars and lorries were parked bumper to bumper, and the people were standing in about groups laughing and talking about the astonishing sight they had just witnessed. Come along now, Sergeant Samways called, striding towards them. Get going, get moving, we can't have this. You're blocking the highway. Nobody ever disobeyed Sergeant Samways, and soon the people were drifting back to their cars and getting in. In a few minutes they were all gone too. Only the four of us were left now, Doc Spencer, Sergeant Samways, and my father and me. Well, William, Sergeant Samways says, coming back from the road to join us beside the pumps, them pheasants was the most astonishing sight I ever seen in my entire life. It was lovely, Doc Spencer said, just lovely. Didn't you enjoy it, Danny? Marvellous, I said. Pity we lost them, my father said. It was very near broke my heart when they all started flying out from the pram. I knew we'd lost them then. But how in Evan's name did you ever catch him in the first place, said Sergeant Samways. How did you do it, Willem? Come on, man, let me in on the secret, my father told him. He kept it short, but even then it made a fine story, and all the way through it the sergeant kept saying, well, I never, well, I'm blowed. You could knock me down with a feather, stone at crows and things like that. And when the story was finished, he pointed his long policeman's finger straight at my face and cried, well, I'll be jiggered. I never would have thought a little nipper like you would come up with such a fantastical brainwave as that. Young man, I congratulate you. He'll go a long way, young